Imagine your life resume. This is the resume that will be done on the day that you die. So what do you imagine will be on that life resume? No doubt you will read about your accomplishments and your milestones, or on it you'll find all the positions that you've held, all the projects that you've completed. Surely, in this life resume of yours, there would be entries on your relationships and the communities that you were part of. Now imagine on this resume something else. Imagine this resume revealing your attitude toward life. What would it say? Do you feel like you have an attitude toward life? If you do, does your attitude bring you joy? Starting this Sunday, I want to explore with you a particular attitude, one that is revealed in the life and person of Jesus Christ. It's the attitude I believe Jesus asks each of us to embrace in our life's journey with Him. Over the next 5 Sundays, I want to explore with you this attitude, the art of living abundantly. At the end of this life, imagine that on your resume. Practitioner of the art of living abundantly. Now let me make a couple of things clear right from the start. By art, I mean something like an attitude with flair, an attitude that's creative and meaningful, even poetic and beautiful, reflective and active. By art, I also mean going deeply into our existence, the good and the bad, the struggles and the successes and the strengths. By art, I mean it's a process of discovery. Second thing I want to say is living abundantly is not the same thing as abundant living. I don't mean having a lot of stuff. I mean living out your life so that it reveals the abundance of God. So there, the art of living abundantly is an attitude with flair, an attitude that's creative and meaningful, poetic and beautiful, reflective and active for every aspect of our existence. An attitude that reveals the abundance of God living in us, in our lives. I think that describes the attitude Jesus had. I think it wasn't just the attitude that Jesus had, it was the attitude that Jesus chose. That's the attitude I want on my life resume, because I choose it over every other kind of attitude I could have. The art of living abundantly begins with giving. More personally, it begins with me choosing to be a giver. Every saint, every hero, every person who has ever truly loved, every person who has ever truly lived has been a giver. Sociologists and psychologists tell us that people who are givers are happier, they are more fulfilled, and I'll bet that has been your experience when you help someone, when you serve someone, when your contribution makes a difference in somebody's life, you feel good. Being a giver feels good. Being a giver reveals goodness. No wonder Jesus was a giver. I can only imagine the joy he felt in feeding 5,000 people. I would love to have seen it in person. As John's Gospel tells it, Jesus sees this great crowd of people who've been following him, who've been gathered for the Passover in Jerusalem. And these people so deeply wished to hear a message of hope and transformation and joy. They were burdened by sickness and brokenness and suffering. Jesus, very much in control of the situation, asks his disciples, well, how are we going to feed all these people? struggling to eat, struggling for some kind of fullness in their lives. You can choose to share, to be a giver. Now, you've heard me use the word choose several times already this morning. You can call it a daily commitment. You can call it the daily practice of the art of living abundantly. Sometimes the choosing happens very matter-of-factly. You really decide to be a giver in a particular instance. Whether it's someone who asks you for help on the street, a close friend who really desires something from you to help them thrive, to help you give a child, the love that you would offer to someone who's lonely. Day by day, instant by instant, you decide to be a giver. Because giving feels good. Some people make a point of giving every day or regularly, much the same way that you might work out on a regular basis or save the weekend for reading really good books or checking your Facebook account to keep up with your friends. There's a rhythm to all those things, and there can be, should be perhaps, a rhythm to giving. Choosing to be a giving person on a regular basis supports an attitude of joy in your life. And as we practice living abundantly, there are two things that come up. Number one, there will be days you choose not to be a giver. And number two, there will be days when the act of giving chooses you. The first thing is common to us all. It's pretty rare that someone is genuinely, completely incapable of being a giver in a particular situation or on a regular basis. It's not that we can't. We won't. Sure, we might make excuses. We might be selfish. We might be lazy. We might just be worn out. There are even occasions when we shouldn't be givers. We shouldn't give what the receiver is asking for, maybe even for their own good. To give or not to give is a daily human question. And in that daily human question is the balance of receiving joy in your own life. And as followers of Jesus, our choices about giving reveal our side of the relationship with Him. We indeed have limits and weaknesses when it comes to being givers. Which leads me to the second thing. There will be days when the act of giving chooses you. Because sometimes we realize it's God giving through us, almost despite our weaknesses and our limitations. And God's abundance doesn't want to stop. God's abundance has suddenly found in you a dance partner, a collaborator, a gracious host. And God's heart says to you, let's dance, let's work together, let's share the feast together. Don't stop now, this is fun, this is wonderful, God says. How could you say no? God's joy is in finding a willing accomplice to share the good news of His kingdom. He finds that in you and me. Some of you have heard me read a passage by a writer, Annie Dillard, in the past. In Annie Dillard's book, The Writer's Life, she shares her own thoughts on what it means to be a writer. And she offers some advice there that has given many creative people some inspiration and wisdom. Here is what Annie Dillard writes about writing. Listen. One of the few things I know about writing is this. Spend it all. Shoot it, play it, lose it all right away every time. Do not hoard what seems good for a later place in the book or for another book. Give it all. Give it now. The impulse to save something good for a better place later is the signal to spend it now. Something more will arise for later, something better. These things fill from behind, from beneath, like well water. Similarly, the impulse to keep to yourself what you have learned is not only shameful, it's destructive. Anything you do not give freely and abundantly becomes lost to you. You open your safe, you find ashes. Giving is part of every creative process, not just writing when it's living. You think giving comes from you, but you discover it's coming through you. Something is coming through you, and the best part of you knows you shouldn't stop. Giving is your partnership with the abundance of God. Again, the art of living abundantly is an attitude with flair, an attitude that's creative and meaningful, poetic and beautiful, reflective and active, every aspect of our existence. It's an attitude that reveals the abundance of God in our lives. Did you hear that in the prayer that Paul offers to the church in Ephesus, our second reading? I'm going to pray it again. This is a prayer for us too, church. Paul says, I ask the Father to strengthen you by His Spirit, not a brute strength, but a glorious inner strength, that Christ will live in you as you open the door and invite Him in. And I ask Him that with both feet firmly planted on love, you'll be able to take Him with all the followers of Jesus in extravagant dimensions of Christ's love. Reach out and experience the breadth. Test its length, plumb its depths, rise to its heights, live full lives, full in the fullness of God. God can do anything, you know, Paul continues, far more than you can ever imagine or guess or request in your wildest dreams. He does it not by pushing us around, but by working within us, His Spirit deeply and gently within us. God is the giver through you and me. That is what He does. That's what He wants to do with us. Be wary of too great a distance between your giving and God. Yes, when you give, it's your time, it's your food, it's your care. When you give, it is your money, your help, your gifts. It's your loaves, it's your fishes, it's your life. And yet Paul's prayer says to us that all these things that are ours, we're more than the sum of all those parts. We are, through our giving, something beyond our imagining with God. This past week, I wrote a